Within minutes of its release, the whistleblower complaint sparking clashes on Capitol Hill.
A phone call that shows the president trying to shake down Ukraine's president for dirt on his political rivals.
Announcing an official impeachment inquiry will now...
The president's also attacking Fox.
It's all fake stuff that the media makes up with the Democrats, which are their partners.
Hello, I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're at The Listening Post. Here are some of the media stories that we're covering this week. Donald Trump and Fox News. There are signs that the president's biggest supporter on the American airwaves is having some serious second thoughts. He draws crowds that will put Bollywood superstars and Indian cricketers to shame. India's Narendra Modi and the art of the overseas mega rally. 1 year after the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, the Saudi crown prince gets a grilling on American television and comes up short. And Greta Tunberg's climate speech as a Swedish death metal song somehow, how dare you, strikes the right note. As the impeachment inquiry in the U.S. Congress gathers steam, President Trump tweets about a coup and talk of a looming civil war. There are signs of an in-house civil war at the biggest, most influential news network in the country, Fox News. The complaint at the center of the impeachment story, filed by an anonymous whistleblower, alleges that Trump abused his powers by asking the government of Ukraine to dig up dirt on Joe Biden, a possible opponent in next year's presidential election. Fox has been a bedrock of support for this president. And there were some signs before the Ukraine story of dissent at the network on where Fox should draw the line in its backing of Trump. However, this story has exposed those divisions like never before. The hosts arguing with each other on the air reflect a deeper split amongst Fox executives and within the network's owners, the Murdoch family. And as Fox's best-known viewer, it's not like Donald Trump hasn't noticed. Some of those angry tweets he used to reserve for CNN and the New York Times are now heading Fox's way. Our starting point this week is Washington, D.C. The prospect of the impeachment of Donald Trump has been a preoccupation of much of the American news media since before Trump was even sworn in. This headline was published just 6 days after Trump was elected, more than 2 months before he took office. Then came the Russiagate story.
Out of Washington and the latest on the Russia investigation.
On the alleged collusion between the Trump campaign and the Kremlin during the 2016 election. The investigation into that by special counsel Robert Mueller had many U.S. news outlets feasting on the story for more than 2 years.
If the American presidency right now is the product of collusion between the Russian intelligence services and an American campaign, I mean, that is so profoundly big.
In the end, it fell short of the high expectations that many journalists, in their excitement, had helped to create. All of which has made it easier for the White House to argue that the Ukraine story, which is centered around a phone call between Trump and President Volodymyr Zelenskiy, is just more of the same.
The Russia investigation, that was such a complex set of facts that I think it was tough for Democrats to really explain why Trump should be impeached.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor.
Whereas here, with the whistleblower complaint regarding Trump's dealings, not just with Ukraine, but with other countries as well, is a lot more straightforward. And so I think that has lent itself to making a clearer case for impeachment.
The White House have just released the transcript of the July 25th phone call between President Trump and the Ukrainian President Zelenskiy.
There was a discussion about some military aid that we were supposed to send, but Trump had put a pause on that. And so then this phone call happens, and Trump says, you know, paraphrasing, but okay, I'm going to need you to do us a favor, though. And the favor that he's asking is he wants him to investigate his chief political rival in Joe Biden. Donald Trump leveraged his power over a Ukrainian leader, and that's very simple. You can explain that to almost anyone. And once you explain to them that it's illegal, it will be very easy for them to understand that.
Much of the media in this country is not just fake, it's corrupt.
The president's response has followed the standard shoot-the-messenger pattern, attacks on the news outlets reporting the story, as well as a few potshots at the network that usually has his back, Fox News. Signs that Donald Trump's affection for Fox was on the wane had come even before the Ukraine story turned up the heat. 6 weeks ago, after the network ran an unflattering poll, Trump tweeted, "Fox isn't working for us anymore."
Over the past few weeks or months, I'd argue, the president has been calling into question some of Fox media hosts, as well as the network itself, for not always coming to his defense. The president expects Fox to be in his corner. He expects people to come to his defense, and when they don't necessarily, at least in his eyes, there is some tension there.
For most of his term, Fox has defended the president. Occasionally, news anchors Shepard Smith and Chris Wallace have swum against the current and told it like it is.
Why did the president use private attorneys rather than go to the State Department?
But they are vastly outnumbered, and the hardcore support for Trump comes in primetime through the hosts of opinion shows, names like Carlson, Hannity, and Ingram. The Ukraine story has resulted in that schism being laid bare on Fox's air.
Napolitano was here. So you have this tension within Fox of these two anchors essentially assailing each other's integrity. Shep Smith wants to be able to cover the news the way he thinks is appropriate. He had on Judge Andrew Napolitano. He has said that these are serious issues raised by the whistleblower.
That to which the president has admitted is in and of itself a crime.
Yes, this is the same crime for...
This is seen as insufficiently devoted to the president's position. So you saw Tucker Carlson some hours later, the same channel, bring on former federal prosecutor Joe DeGenevieve.
Is it a crime? You're a former federal prosecutor.
Well, I think Judge Napolitano is a fool.
Shep Smith came back, a day later and said,
attacking our colleague who's here to offer legal assessments on our air in our work home is repugnant.
Shep Smith said we could disagree with his ideas, but this is ridiculous. And then Tucker Carlson did it again the next night.
Repugnant! Not clear if that was you or me, but someone's repugnant.
And so that feud between Shepard Smith and Tucker Carlson did kind of highlight a schism at Fox News. Again, this isn't really a new thing. But because impeachment is such a significant thing to possibly remove a president from office, it seems like the stakes have gotten higher, and so these feuds have become something that people are talking about.
That schism that Fox viewers see in the network's output also exists and probably starts at the executive level. Rupert Murdoch's heir apparent, Lachlan Murdoch, is reportedly far less enamored of the president than his father is. And although Fox continues to hire ex-administration officials, like former Director of Communications Hope Hicks, it has also hired one of Trump's Republican adversaries, the former Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, which may prove significant down the road.
If you could combine a roller coaster and a revolving door, that would describe the relationship between the Republican Party and the Trump White House and Fox News. And this is part of Murdoch buying certain kinds of allegiances from figures across the political spectrum. It will be undone if and when Trump himself is undone. But for the moment, for now, it is impossible to disambiguate the relationship between the two. It may well be that Paul Ryan wants to urge Lachlan Murdoch to foresee a world beyond Trump.
I wouldn't say that the president's bedrock of support at Fox is wavering. I don't think his relationship with Fox News is going to change. He may criticize certain people within Fox, but his relationship with the network as a whole is still very strong. He needs Fox in a way that they really get to his base. They get to the people who vote for him and he hopes will vote for them again.
Come on up, Sean Hannity.
Sometimes Fox anchors hit the road with President Trump, not to cover him, to campaign with him. When Jeanine Pirro or Sean Hannity appear alongside Trump at a rally, they look more like running mates than journalists. When Hannity returns to his studio, he routinely criticizes other reporters for their lack of objectivity.
Biden Incorporated, they have now been exposed in spite of the media mob's lying and the cloud.
On Ukraine, Hannity argues the real story is the corruption of the Biden family. And as one of his colleagues said this past week, Hannity, and by extension Fox News, are all that stands between Donald Trump becoming the next Richard Nixon, the president the Washington Post brought down in the 1970s Watergate scandal.
If it wasn't your show, Sean, they would destroy him absolutely. You're the difference between
Donald J. Trump and Richard Nixon.
You know, it is kind of an interesting thought exercise to think about what, how things might have been different for Nixon had he had the conservative media infrastructure that exists today.
Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
Because, if you read about Watergate, a lot of the big revelations that occurred in the Washington Post or on, during the Watergate hearings, there wasn't kind of this right-wing infrastructure spinning it, immediately into tens of millions of people every night. But I do think that it's likely that Nixon would have survived Watergate had he had something like Fox News spinning the Watergate hearings, highlighting Democrats looking bad during moments where they were questioning witnesses, that sort of thing. It kind of provides a whole different way of interpreting news events.
Then the president responds,
That is something Fox has always offered Americans, a whole new way, a right-wing way of interpreting the news.
We're going to lay out the truth, each and every detail, that the president did absolutely nothing wrong, nothing.
Its reporters are skilled at glossing over the facts, but the executives calling the shots know there is no escaping the numbers. They live and die by ratings, something Donald Trump knows all about. And the polls now showing a majority of Americans are in favor of impeaching the president do not bode well for the Trump-Fox relationship. It's already starting to get messy. The breakup, should it come to that, will be must-watch TV. We're looking at other media stories that are on our radar this week with one of our producers, Tariq Nafa. Tariq, 1 year ago this week, the Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi walked into that Saudi consulate in Istanbul where he was suffocated, killed, and then dismembered. The CIA has concluded that the man who ordered that killing was the Saudi Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, known as MBS. This past week, MBS went on CBS's 60 Minutes in the U.S. to defend himself. How did that go?
So, Richard, when Mohammed bin Salman first appeared on 60 Minutes back in 2018, CBS's Norah O'Donnell seemed rather impressed with his ideas. This time round, she was much more forceful.
Did you order the murder of Jamal Khashoggi?
Absolutely not. This was a heinous crime. But I take full responsibility as a leader in Saudi Arabia, especially since it was committed by individuals working for the Saudi government.
It's a pretty weak response because Mohammed bin Salman is the Saudi government, and a killing of a high-profile citizen on foreign soil would never have been carried out without his say-so.
All right, but Khashoggi was just one target of Riyadh's campaign against internal dissent. He was a journalist, had that platform in the Washington Post. His story was always going to get a lot of coverage. But CBS also asked about female dissidents in Saudi Arabia who have also spent time in prison. How did MBS deal with that?
So the question was about al-hathloul, whose story is one we hear much less about. She's a women's rights activist who was kidnapped from the UAE back in March 2018 and has been imprisoned in Saudi Arabia ever since. O'Donnell asked bin Salman about reports that Hathloul has been tortured while in jail. This is how he responded.
If this is correct, it is very heinous. Islam forbids torture. The Saudi laws forbid torture. Human conscience forbids torture. And I will personally follow up on this matter.
As you can imagine, this exchange has generated a lot of debate online, not least among Saudis. I spoke with a Saudi activist and blogger, Umayma Najjar, about the interview on 60 Minutes.
Obviously, he's contradicting himself because in the previous interview that he did previously on the same show, he said that the women have been arrested because there was evidence against them. But now he's saying that he doesn't know what's happening. I believe he's fully aware of it. And the fact that they've been keeping her away is kind of a red flag. That there is something happening. The Saudi government is trying to hide it. And perhaps one of the reasons why Lieutenant al-hathloul is still in prison because they're afraid that she's going to speak to the international community about what happened.
That was Umayma Najjar on female activists still in jail, still paying a price in Saudi Arabia a year after Khashoggi's killing.
Okay, thanks, Tariq. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has honed the art of the political spectacle, the rallies, the rousing speeches. He held one a couple of weeks back that attracted 50,000 people, including Donald Trump in Houston, Texas. It was the 15th foreign rally Modi has held. Why? It's not as though Modi's supporters with foreign citizenship can actually vote in Indian elections, but they do have money. Theirs is amongst the wealthiest immigrant communities in the U.S., so Houston was a fundraising opportunity that neither Modi nor Trump could afford to pass up. The Indian diaspora has other political uses that Modi is tapping into. Back home, when an Indian emigrant is seen as having made it abroad as a lawyer, a doctor, or a tech whiz, and they support Modi, that reflects well on the Prime Minister, and it all gets fed into the well-oiled Modi media messaging machine. The Listening Post's Meenakshi Ravi now on Narendra Modi's careful, clever use of overseas Indians to appeal to voters at home.
Houston, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has a problem.
Howdy, my friends.
Actually, he has a few. If you were India's Prime Minister, which images would you rather see on television screens back home? Hundreds of farmers descending on the capital, New Delhi, in protest? Soldiers deployed across a Kashmir in lockdown, trying to keep a lid on a geopolitical powder keg? Crowds of people protesting you, your party's ideology and policies? Or would you prefer pictures like these?
Please welcome His Excellency, the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi.
50,000 supporters, most of them Indian Americans, filling a giant stadium and cheering at your rally. The American President, Donald Trump, standing alongside, waving at supporters and walking hand in hand with you. Which pictures would you choose?
Modi currently is besieged on a number of fronts. The economy is in a shambles. Kashmir is another burning issue. Increasingly, you're getting a fair amount of negative international attention. So this was a show of strength for Modi. And it's also a message sent both to his supporters that we will do what we want to, we are standing strong, and a message sent to his detractors that I remain unfazed by your criticism.
I could clearly see that Mr. Modi was on a damage control mode at a time when things were slightly sour between India and the United States of America, especially when it comes to trade.
Friends, we in India have connected well with President Trump.
So at Houston, I could see that he was making that pitch to the United States and was also making sure that everything is hunky-dory between India and the US, and particularly between the two personalities, Mr. Modi and Mr. Trump.
The so-called Howdy Modi rally in Houston was just the latest of 15 foreign rallies Modi has headlined since coming to power in 2014. And President Trump is just the latest foreign leader to stand alongside him. Back in 2015, it was London, David Cameron, and an even bigger crowd of 60,000. As Prime Minister, Modi has travelled out of India nearly 100 times, visiting some 60 countries. Whether it's New York, Johannesburg, or Bahrain, Modi spends an inordinate amount of time on the road with diaspora communities, building political ties and forging political narratives.
He's trying to bring everyone together, that, you know, we might be British, we might be American, but we're still Indian and have Indian heritage. Before, no one really was proud to say they're from India. India was some sort of, remote third world country that no one really gave any importance to. But seeing Prime Minister Modi go out to different countries, it just makes people feel proud to be Indian.
I think Mr. Modi and his BJP have understood the power of the diaspora very well, and they have been able to tap into this power like nobody else has. What is different about the current diaspora is that they have the means, the internet, air travel, to be able to actually access their motherland very easily, which other waves of Indian immigrants would not have been able to do. And what the BJP has done is take this idea that India is your motherland and you have gone elsewhere to work and you can be loyal to both.
The BJP's courting of the overseas Indian did not begin with the Modi government. The practice began way back in the 1930s, and by the turn of the century, BJP leaders like Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee were staging annual events celebrating the successes of Indians abroad. In this year's general election, Narendra Modi's BJP harnessed the diaspora constituency, and it delivered, staging pro-Modi flash mobs in cities around the world and donating dollars, pounds, and dirhams to the cause. Campaigning in the world's largest democracy is an expensive business, and tracking all those overseas donations is not easy, since the system is deliberately opaque. But this much we know: when it comes to fundraising, the BJP runs circles around its Congress party competition.
They're a source of tremendous capital. Those dollars are very, very valuable. The second point I'd say is that just in terms of influence, right, that many of these people may not be able to vote, but they have family members, they have relatives back in India. When you combine it with the ways in which information spreads on WhatsApp, they just sort of become these amplifiers of certain kinds of information or narratives about India. And finally, I think symbolically, the Indian community here is seen as a model minority, a community of achievers. So if Modi can claim those people as his own, he gets, again, a certain amount of symbolic capital, so to speak.
Namaste.
As public relations events, Modi's foreign rallies don't just play to one audience, the diaspora. They're also targeted at Indians back home. The rallies are live streamed and live tweeted, and more than anything, they are made for TV. Through the Modi years, Indian TV channels have seemed amongst the most eager to jump onto the Prime Minister's bandwagon. There are vested interests of owners, genuine ideological alignment in some cases, and often just commercial good sense, because of Modi's popularity with increasingly nationalist masses, to go wall to wall when he puts on a show.
Is brand India under Modi going stronger day by day? That's the question and the big debate coming up on the other side. And the hashtag is Modi, Trump, Dosti.
The media in India is largely pro-government, so very few have had reports on the anti-Modi rallies that were happening in Houston, in Boston, in New York. That will not be emphasized in the Indian media. What will be emphasized is Mr. Trump, endorsing Mr. Modi endorsing Trump, etc. So media management has a big part to play.
Everyone's entitled to their opinion, and it is an open, free and fair democracy. There is freedom of the press. If you watch the Indian news, they're extremely critical of Prime Minister Modi and the BJP government, more so than other foreign channels. I think everyone's just really sick to death of reading the news every day. And so when Modi does address the international community, I think people that are willing and open to listening to him, they already know the facts and they already know what actually is happening, and what he's done is actually for the benefit of India.
That last point is debatable. The overseas rallies clearly benefit Prime Minister Modi. He is feted by the many countries he visits, is granted awards by governments of countries like Saudi Arabia's, Russia's, and the United Arab Emirates, even by organizations such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. But the stated reasons for all those foreign trips is not to boost the Modi brand or to provide more content for all the Indian news channels in his corner. It is to attract more investment into India, iron out better trade deals, and to boost exports. And all of that hasn't quite materialized.
Mr. Modi took over as the Prime Minister in 2014. Between 2014 and 2019, he made nearly 100 foreign trips, which was almost double the number of the trips that his predecessor, Mr. Manmohan Singh, had made. But have they been very effective to take back investment to the country? I doubt that, because statistics show otherwise. India is the third largest investor in the UK. The UK is the third largest investor in India. This was the story even before 2014, and it continues to be.
What this should be seen as, the Modi spectacle, is not just about Modi and India or Trump and America. It is about a certain global politics of emotions and passions and the strongman populist leader. And what this rally is telling us, that is the populist leaders of the world coming together and building constituencies through each other. They all have a similar vocabulary, and these kinds of events are showcasing their vocabulary and their camaraderie to the rest of the world. So this is about a certain global politics which we all need to keep an eye on.
And finally, Greta Tunberg, 16-year-old climate activist as you have never seen or heard her before. Thunberg's been taking a lot of flack from so-called climate skeptics and elements in the right-wing news media with an axe to grind, although they'd probably prefer a chainsaw because it runs on petroleum. They've gone after her over her mental health. They've depicted her as a victim of parental abuse, the political left, as well as a pawn of the liberal news media. Thunberg called out political leaders for not doing enough on climate change at a speech at the UN last week. And when a metalhead, a drummer from New York City, heard that speech and the language that she used, he decided that her passion and her outrage were worthy of a musical makeover. The result, 3.6 million views and counting, is the stuff of which metal memes are made. We'll see you next time here at The Listening Post.
My message is that we'll be watching you.